from Initiative Tabletop. And today I'm going to show you Fill the Barn. It's by Hoopcat. It's ages 8 and up, and it plays in about 30 minutes. It's an interesting family game, actually, that you're trying to plant crops and harvest them and collect the most money for your crops. Let's take a look inside, shall we? One thing I'm always a really big fan of is a nice rule book. And this game has a great rule book. It's small and concise, so it contains everything that you need for the game without going overboard on explanations. It's really great, and it's an excellent tool for learning the game and for any questions that you might have during the game. So at the beginning of the game, you're going to pass out 5 cards to each player. These are the cards that you would be passing out. And you can see over here, I have the whole stack over here. You also give people $1,500, and it's just paper money that you have. I guess kind of think of Monopoly. So that's the money that you have that basically is your victory points. And so the goal of the game is to harvest as many crops as you can and to collect the most money, and whoever has the most money at the end of the game wins. So what you do during your turn, you're going to look at your hand, and you're going to try to probably plant a crop. So for instance, here's carrots. It's $300. I would pay $300 to the bank. I'd lay that down, and I would draw a new card, and that would be the end of my turn. Another thing that I could do on my turn, because you could either play a card, or you can discard 1 to 3 cards, and then you draw back 1 to 3 cards depending on how many you discarded. If you ever run out of cards in the deck does not reshuffle, and it does not necessarily trigger the end of the game. Everybody will go on their turn and either play cards from their hand, or they will say pass. Once everybody has said pass, the game ends, and you will count up your money to see who has the most money, and you will win. That's the basics as far as how to play. So for instance, if I had played this carrot card, and I had paid the $300, on my next turn, I could pay $300 for this harvest card, and then I would harvest this and put it in the highest spot in the barn. So this is $1,200. So I would gain $1,200 from the bank after I pay my $300. So if you wanted to, whichever is easier for you, you could either pay the $300 or you can deduct it from the $1,200, however your group feels comfortable. And then this would just get discarded, and then I would draw a new card, and it would pass on to the next player. And there's different types of cards that's in this game as well. There's cards such as junk, which junk is, it's kind of a unique strategy with junk, because you fill an empty barn slot. So you would fill one of these barn slots in here, and you're like, okay, well, there's junk in the barn, but what can I do to get rid of it? Fortunately, there is a cleanup card that you can use in this game that would remove this junk from the barn. Now be cautious. There is not very many of those. I believe I counted 1 cleanup card, and there's a couple junk cards, so there just may be some more junk in the barn. Some other cards that are interesting in the game, you have fertilizer, which would help increase the value of the crop that you have when you go to harvest it and put it in the barn. You also have mice, which it removes 1 harvest from the barn. You have bugs, where everybody will lose a planted field of the same type that you have. It doesn't affect you. There's also drought cards that are in here, which will just make everybody lose all of their crops unless they're irrigated. So maybe on one of your turns, you may want to irrigate one of your fields. However, if you do happen to lose a field to bugs or to a drought, you can, if you have insurance, play it, and you can recover the planting cost. The planting cost is what I showed earlier with the carrots. That would be $300. You would recover the planting cost. So basically, you wouldn't lose out. You'd lose your crop, but you wouldn't lose the price that you paid to plant the crop. And there's cards like trading with different players, passing cards. There's cards in here that talk about peak. So that's the basic of the game. You're just going to play 1 card, and you're just going to go around, and you're going to try to fill the barn. When the last space is filled in the barn, if it was filled with a crop, then that person would gain $500 for filling the barn. If it gets filled with junk for the last space, it just signals the end of the game. People count up the money. Whoever has the most money wins. So that was Fill the Barn. It's actually quite an interesting game. The first time that I got the chance to play it, I played it in a 2-player setting, and I will admit I was a bit on the fence about it at first. Then I took it over to my parents' place, and played with both of them and with my husband. And 4 players, it was a lot of fun. We feel like that the different things that can affect, like droughts, bugs, those different things, they hit more on a global scale when you're playing with at least 3 or 4 different players. Somebody plays drought, everybody loses their crop. And it seems to be less cards to go between everybody, which really makes you strategize. Do I really want to get rid of this harvest card and then later on I can't plant because all the harvest cards in the discard pile? So really the best way to play this game is 3 to 4 players. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it for 2. Also, another thing to note, this game is fun, and it's definitely more of a family game though. Some people that like a lot of heavy mechanics, maybe I guess what some people might call hardcore gamers, they might sit there and say, oh, this is a little too easy. So really this is more of a family-oriented game, which there's nothing wrong with that. A family-oriented game is just something that you can sit down, you can enjoy with your family, obviously called family-oriented, but it's something that you can sit there and you can talk while you're playing the game, and you don't have to so much focus on what is that person doing. You can kind of chill until it's your next turn, and the turns go really quick, so you're not sitting there with a lot of downtime. It's a really lighthearted game. It's one that would be easy to teach to children. It does recommend 8 or up. The only thing that may be a little tricky for children is you're dealing with larger denominations as far as money goes, because you're dealing with 500s and hundreds and thousands, and sometimes when you throw in those extra zeros, that may throw the children off a little bit, but you can help them out by saying, oh, drop a couple zeros, or however you need, and it's also a good way to help teach children math, because they get the opportunity to see how much it costs to plant this particular crop, and they get to see how much it costs to harvest, and they get to see how much they gain from it. It can even help them figure out, well, how much did you actually gain from planting that particular crop, and how much did you gain from harvesting it? So it's a really interesting game that could even be educational as well as fun. So I would highly recommend it, especially for family gamers. Some of the hardcore gamers, you may not necessarily find that this is something you want to have on your shelf, but if you're into family games or you just like to have a nice lighthearted game, Fill the Barn is your ticket. Thanks for watching this video and checking out Initiative Tabletop. May the dice roll in your favor.